Cold Case, an Angelica Dale mystery by P.K. Armstrong. Chapter 32. We had all left the museum yesterday in a strange mood. While I was elated that I discovered the truth, the reality that we could not go back and save those young lives still left a pall over the scene. We retrieved Violet from the nice museum worker that had kept her occupied while we debriefed and headed back to the house. Chuck, Daniel, Jacob, and Christopher took care of dinner while Sandy, Violet, and I snuggled up in the family room and watched a movie. We didn't bother setting the table, but all sat around with trays eating our chili topped with whatever we desired. Chuck was the first one with a question. So I saw Delaney said something to you as he was leaving that made you smile. What did he say? I smiled at Chuck, thinking once again that Christopher's father wasn't one to miss details, no matter how small. He said maybe I should change my podcast from "They got away with it" to "Did they get away with it?" Chuck nodded his head, and Sandy sat down next to him. It sounds like he may have learned his lessons about jumping to conclusions. I shrugged. I don't know. I liked him, and I think he is a good podcaster. I'd like to think, had he investigated things himself, he would have realized that Stormie was innocent. I don't think he and Moira will be together much longer, Jacob interjected. Why not? Sandy turned to Jacob. Delaney seemed to be a bit disgusted with her, he responded candidly. So, Daniel, would you like to tell me how your first undercover operation went? Christopher looked at his brother, dangerously calm. Chuck cleared his throat and Jacob covered a grin. It wasn't. I didn't. Daniel couldn't seem to get his words in order. Christopher raised an eyebrow and Daniel tried again. I thought I was helping. I didn't think it was dangerous, Daniel admitted. Christopher sighed. Daniel, investigations are inherently dangerous. You never know until you know who is a witness or who is a suspect, and you never know how a witness or a suspect is going to react, even on a cold case that you think everyone has forgotten. I should have remembered that myself before getting you all involved, I said, tracing circles on Violet's arm as she wiggled in closer. Now, Angel, don't go blaming yourself, Chuck admonished. Daniel is responsible for his own actions. We all are. Daniel, you shouldn't have taken the chances that you took, Christopher said sternly. He was trying to protect Angel. Isn't that what you wanted? Jacob defended his brother. Christopher looked at his youngest brother and then at the rest of his family. He sighed, but before he could speak, family protects family. But that doesn't give you an excuse to do something stupid, Violet baldly stated. Daniel and Jacob's mouths dropped open, and Christopher and I glanced at each other and covered our laughter. Chuck and Sandy smiled. How smart you are, Violet, Sandy cooed. Daniel recovered and spoke. I am sorry, Angel. I didn't mean to intrude on your case, but I was truly worried. I know, Daniel, and it makes me feel good to think that you worried about me so much. But your brother is right. It's dangerous, I replied. But you guys do it, Jacob insisted. We're trained, Jacob, Christopher said, a little exasperated. There are things we prepare for before and things we watch out for when interviewing witnesses or confronting suspects. Besides, he paused and looked at Daniel. Angel is good at what she does. You could have put her in danger. Had something gone wrong, then she would have had to save herself and you, Christopher said firmly. Daniel and Jacob were finally getting the point. They began to look properly chastised when Chuck effectively ended the conversation with, Frankly, I'm a little angry that you two feel you should question your brother or Angel on this. They're the professionals, and Angel was nice enough to include us and let us help where we could. She didn't ask, we offered. You need to follow her direction or don't bother helping at all. Understand? Both boys nodded. Yes, Dad. Sorry, Angel. I smiled at the boys. Sandy stood, walked over, and gave Violet a loving pinch. I think the boys deserve dessert. What do you think? Violet nodded emphatically.
Yeah, after I've been in trouble, I get ice cream and it makes me feel better.
She got up from the sofa to help Sandy with the ice cream, and as she walked by Daniel and Jacob, she shook her finger at them.
Don't do it again, guys.
And we dissolved into laughter. I woke the next morning with Violet snuggled next to me. I listened to her breathing and the wind moving the branches of the tree against the window. I stroked her cheek and watched her sleep for a moment. I almost drifted back to sleep myself until I heard a light tap on the door before it slowly opened. "Good morning," Christopher whispered. "Did I wake you?" "No, not really. I was just listening to the wind." "And watching Violet sleep," Christopher guessed. "Get dressed and come downstairs. I'll start the coffee." I rolled out of bed and dressed in leggings and an oversized sweater. I quietly grabbed my cell phone and went to wash my face and brush my teeth. I peeked in, made sure Violet was still sleeping, and made my way to the kitchen. As promised, Christopher was boiling water and warming up croissants when I entered. He had found the insulated French press I bought when I first arrived and set out mugs, creamer, butter, and preserves on a tray. "Go get your jacket and boots on." I looked at him confused. "Where are we going?" "On the patio. It's all ready." He stopped and spread out his hands to point out his attire. He was dressed for the cold. "Hurry up before the croissants and coffee get cold." After donning my jacket and my faux shearling boots, I returned to the kitchen to find it empty. I heard the patio door and followed. The patio had been warmed up with the porcelain heaters, the contrast between the heat of the patio and the cold just off the steps creating a smoky mist. Christopher had set the tray on the small coffee table in front of the love seat and was pouring my coffee. He pulled out a pair of fingerless gloves and then handed me a cup. I curled up next to him and watched as he generously buttered me a croissant and lathered on apricot preserves, my favorite. "This is perfect," I declared. "How long have you been up?" "Just an hour. I wanted to make sure the porch was warm enough to sit out here." "Are you okay? Warm enough?" "Yes." I leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Thank you." We drank and ate in silence except for the crack in the branches that were weighed down with snow. Somewhere in the distance, a snowplow was working to clear the streets. "Have I told you that I'm so glad you drove in, you and Violet?" As the case was winding down, I was feeling a little fatigued. Listening to everyone's history about the fire and what it did to them and their families, seeing the pictures from the burnt out building and the autopsies was overwhelming. "I know. I could hear it in your voice." He leaned in and put his arm around me. "I think it's hard knowing that even when you've solved the case, you can't undo the pain and suffering of those left behind. You can't bring back their loved ones. In this case, it's even worse." "Why?" I asked. "Because there was no one to bring to justice. The two people responsible for the fire are dead." He gave me a firm look. "But you should always remember that Stormie Gyles needed to know the truth. She needed her name cleared. Susanna, Tony, and even Moira, whether she wanted to believe it or not, all needed to know the truth. And you, Angel, you gave them that truth. I'm proud of you." I kissed him again. "Thank you for saying that." We sat still while the sky lightened but remained overcast, the snow still falling heavily. "Angel?" "Hmm?" He took his arm from around me and shifted sideways so he could look me in the face. "I think—" He didn't continue. I smiled to encourage him because whatever he had to say seemed to be stuck in the back of his throat. He began again. "I think I don't like it when we aren't together. I need to see you, not just when things go wrong, but I need to know things are right." I sat up a little unsure. "Christopher, is something wrong?" I asked, slightly alarmed. "No, no, everything is fine, but while you were away, I realized that a whole piece of my life was missing. I did the job, and when I wasn't working, I spent time with Violet and your parents. It helped, but it wasn't enough. I needed you. I put a hand to his cheek. Are you asking me not to go out of town for work again? He laughed. No, of course not. I know we both may need to travel for work. He paused and looked at me, his eyes intense with a touch of desperation. I need you and Violet to know that I am always going to be waiting for you. I kissed him lightly on the lips. We know that. Don't ever doubt it. My eyes misted at his emotion. But you need to know we will always be waiting for you. We're family. He sighed heavily and reached in his pocket and pulled out a small box. I looked at him, a little surprised. Christopher? Family, yes, but can we make it official? Will you marry me? He ran a finger down my cheek. I took the box and opened it to find a beautiful ring. I picked it up. It's so exquisite. I looked up at him to see a little quirk in his lips and realized he was waiting for my answer. Yes, yes, I will. We both laughed, and he took me in his arms and we kissed again. After a while, I pulled back begrudgingly and said, we should go in and tell Violet. Oh, and your parents. I think they already have a good idea. The ring was left to me by my grandmother, so I had to ask my dad to get it out of the safety deposit box. Well, let's go in and tell everyone. We stood up and he grabbed my hand. He bent down, kissed my forehead, and grasping my hand firmly in his, led me back into the house. The end.